The while do loop is similar to the do while loop, except that the conditional check is at the beginning of the loop rather than at the end. This means that under some conditions the code inside the loop might never get executed. A while do loop therefore allows you to execute and repeat a section of code only if you want to do so. Care has to be taken when writing loops to ensure that you don't create a situation where the loop cannot end. This is called an infinite loop, and it can cause computers to lock up in an endless cycle of code that cannot be stopped. We might have a look at an infinite loop later. However, for now, let us start with a simple while loop that will allow us to count up from 1 to 5 and then output the result. So this is the JustBasic program to do exactly that. We start by creating a variable called x and initializing it to the value 1. We then create the beginning point of our loop. While x is less than or equal to 5, we're going to print out the value of x. We're then going to increment x by 1, add 1 to it, and this is the end statement, while end, awend. This is the point at which, if we omit this line, x would never actually increase. So if we forget to put in x equals x plus 1, then our loop would just keep on going round and round and round, because x would never get any greater than 1, and it would be locked in an endless cycle. So we'll take great care to put that line of code in. When x reaches 5, the loop will then stop, because the while condition will evaluate to false, therefore taking execution to beyond the end of the while loop. So these print statements followed by will be output. So let us run that program. And there we can see our output is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as expected, followed by a couple of blank lines and the word by. So as it stands, this is pretty simple. So let us extend this program by asking the user what value they would like to start counting from, or start count up to, I should say. So if you just bear with me while I replace the code. Cut and paste didn't work, so I'll type it in. Let's put in a couple of messages. Welcome to the counting program. So some instructions to the user, and then we'll ask them what value, what number would you like to count up to, and then we'll take that value in and store it in a variable called nval. We still need to use x, because x is the value that increments each time the loop goes through, but instead of the loop now ending at 5, at a hard-coded value of 5, it will now end when we reach nval, whatever that might be. So let us run that program. Let's try the 5 as we had before, and that works okay. Run it again. Let's try 56. It counts up to 56. Run it again. Let's try 1. Counts up to 1, so it goes through once. And then this is the difference between the while do and the end and the do while. If we enter 0, we don't actually count anything. Let's examine why. If we enter 0 the input statement, then nval will store the value 0. So while x is less than or equal to nval, so 1 is not less than or equal to 0. So the while condition immediately evaluates to false, which means the loop never executes this code ever, and it simply jumps to the print statements at the end. So just to repeat, if we type in a number greater than or equal to 1, it works fine, and if we put in a 0 or even a minus value, then the loop never actually executes. While do loops are often used when reading data in from data files or accepting input from a keyboard. In some cases the actual data file itself might be missing, so trying to read from it would cause an input-output error and maybe the program to fall over or crash. So in such cases we can use the while do loop to only read in and process the data if the file read operation has actually worked, i.e. the file exists. As we haven't yet introduced the concept of data files, this is a little hard to illustrate, but the following code simulates a similar situation. names are requested and read from the keyboard using an input statement, and the program then counts the number of names entered. If no name is entered at the beginning of the program, then the loop will not be entered and no counting will take place. If a name is entered, then the counting will begin and the program will keep on counting names that are entered until the user enters no name, i.e. they simply press enter on the keyboard. So let's have a look at that code in operation. So we initialize a counter at the beginning to 0. We then output a print instruction to tell the user what to do. So please enter all names, and in brackets we tell them or simply enter to quit. We then accept some input from the keyboard. This double quotes followed by the semicolon at the beginning here simply removes a question mark, which might be a default output of the input statement in JustBasic. And we then have a while statement. So while name string is not empty. So in other words, while something was entered, increment count and then get another name in, and it will keep on doing that until no name is entered. When it finishes, so no name is entered, the WEND signifies the end of the while loop. We can then output the value of the count, so the count will tell us how many names we entered. So let's run it first of all, and let's enter some simple names. So let's enter Fred, Harry, Sally and Sue. And if I then hit a blank line, a blank enter, that tells the loop to end, and it successfully counts the number of names that we entered, 4. Let's run the program again, but this time just hit enter to start with, and then we can see therefore that there's been no counting. You entered 0 names, so the actual counting code was never executed, the loop was never entered.